On most days, I would feel a surge of comfort whenever our 8-month-old son Leo made his gentle, gurgling noises. Today, though, while I cradled him in my arms, that comforting emptiness replaced it. Clara, my wife, was sitting precariously on the floral sofa, her eyes, which normally sparkle with love, fixated on Leo with an almost frantic intensity. She reached out to pet his fluffy hair and said, "Look at our little man." The term "our" irritated me like a shard of glass stuck in my throat. It was a word I used to hold in high regard, representing our shared history and the life we had created. But now it served as a cruel reminder of the treachery I was about to reveal. My parents' living room had always been a sanctuary for me and my siblings. My folks, Clara's folks, and Anna, her younger sister, were all here today. Implicit tension weighed heavily on the atmosphere. The customary joyous family gathering had been replaced with an artificially composed one, and everyone could see something was wrong. Everyone was holding their breath, but no one could have predicted how severely our reality was about to be rocked. Uncomfortably, Clara moved her body and darted her gaze about the room. She wanted to know if David was okay, but her voice was a bit too high. "Whoa, you've been dead silent all day." His innocent face stood in sharp contrast to the chaos I was experiencing, and I glanced down at Leo. The tempest brewing all around him had completely escaped his consciousness. The fact that I had brought a child into a life that was founded on a falsehood was maybe the most terrible aspect. The burden of the reality washed over me as I inhaled deeply. "Everything is not okay," I said Clara in a low, controlled voice. With a concerned expression on her face, my mother snatched Leo from me and rose up, as if she were possessed. I proceeded to the mahogany side table and removed the sealed package that I had previously set there. The secret, an accusation ready to be leveled, appeared to resonate on the crisp white paper. I proudly displayed the envelope, announcing that these had arrived in the mail earlier today. "This is the outcome of a test to determine paternity." An unmistakable look of terror flashed across Clara's face as her cheeks flushed and her hand instinctively went to her throat. I ripped open the envelope, the sound reverberating across the painfully quiet room. The harsh black text of the DNA results seemed like a slap in the face as I pulled out the single sheet of paper and presented it to her. Nervously, Clara grasped the sheet of paper. Her expression became more serious as she skimmed the paper. In her throat, her breath caught. Everyone in the room held their breath, as if they were all actors in a play they were completely unaware of. Her eyes were moist with unshed tears as she finally looked up after what seemed like a lifetime. She stammered, her words barely audible, like if something was wrong. "Oh my God! I swear it's true!" I exclaimed with conviction. These results disprove Leo's claim of being my son. Following this, there was an ear-piercing quiet. In the abrupt silence, Clara's mother's gasp hardly registered. Leo was shielded from Clara by my own mother, who glared at her with an uncharacteristic mute fury. It appeared as though 10 years had passed for Clara's dad. Margaret, Clara's sister, gazed at her with such contempt that the latter had to avert her eyes. All I could do was watch as our marriage and our lives, which we had painstakingly built, fell apart. "I don't know who his father is." With her eyes begging for me, Clara choked out, but I couldn't console her. I was no longer able to offer comfort because my heart had already been severed. "That," I continued, fixing my eyes on hers, "is a question that will require an answer from you. And you can begin by explaining your rationale for believing you could escape punishment." I need not have elaborated. A dense and weighty suggestion lingered in the atmosphere. As her carefully built world crumbled around her, she started to cry. "I didn't intend to," she screamed. In a flash, it occurred. The remarks seemed like a jab at my intelligence because they were so cliched and predictable. It was a sudden event. Raising my voice, I echoed, "This wasn't an inebriated party faux pas, Clara. It was a baby. For months, this was all about lying and deceit. You had the nerve to bring a child from another man into our home and into my life, and then you called him ours." The pent-up rage I'd been carrying around finally burst forth. A powerful surge of wrath overcame me, and I wanted to smash something. As my voice dipped into a low growl, I inched closer to her. "Get ready to go. I told you," gesturing toward the door. A mixture of horror and shock washed over Clara's face, causing her eyes to widen. She questioned, "Where am I supposed to go?" with a quiver in her voice. "Say it with a cold voice. I don't care where you go as long as you bring him along." Leo, who was now wriggling in my mom's embrace, was the object of my gesture. As Clara stutter-talked, tears flowing down her face, she argued that David is still a baby. I sternly told her that he is not my child, but rather the offspring of your treachery, and that I do not want you or your child living with me. My parents and Clara's parents watched in disbelief as the room became silent. My callousness had taken everyone by surprise. However, they were completely unaware of the extent to which my suffering had penetrated my own being. I like it if they were both removed. After realizing I wouldn't budge from my decision, Clara started to gather her belongings while her weeping grew increasingly intense. Despite her horrified expression, my mom delicately returned Leo to Clara. I briefly experienced a sensation similar to a pang, but I pushed it aside. After a while of acting like he was my son, I finally snapped. While Clara was having a hard time loading Leo into his carrier, I went to the door and waited for them to go. Without meeting my gaze, her sister and parents remained silently by her side. Their perception of me had changed. I was no longer familiar. I couldn't care less. I pounded the door shut after Clara left, leaving a depressing echo in the now empty house, while her expression betrayed her anguish. Concerned expressions spread across my parents' features as they approached me. "Is this the correct thing for you to do, David?" Concern evident in my mom's voice, she inquired. "Yep, I'm reclaiming my life," I declared with a steady and determined voice. I strode away from them, not even bothering to glance back. With my decision in hand, I hopped into my car and headed off. Because he had slept with my wife and fathered a child I believed was mine, I had to confront this man. My first stop was to the gym. He was in the weight room when I found him. The wrath I felt when I faced him was tangible, and we ended up having the violent brawl I had imagined. I abandoned the haughty guy as he lay there, a gory wreck. I surrendered to the authorities at the station. What followed was a whirlwind of court appearances. After entering my guilty plea, I was sentenced. I learned of the consequences of my acts as I awaited my punishment. Many in Clara's town looked down on her. The rumor of her adultery quickly spread. Her parents were ashamed of her, her friends abandoned her, and she had lost her job. For her lover, it was the same story. The desert of his existence was filled with unfulfilled promises and crushed ambitions. I flat out refused to speak with Clara, even though she begged for forgiveness and attempted to contact me. Her dishonesty and falsehoods had worn me down. I despised her and wanted no part of her. I must confess that Leo made me hesitate for a second. However, I was well aware that each future gaze at him would inevitably bring up the painful memory of her treachery. She was going to handle him, so I stepped back. After finishing my sentence, I retreated. I moved to a new city, found a new job, and made new acquaintances. I dove headfirst into my work and the process of discovering who I was. Even while it was progress, it was sluggish development. A therapist helped me overcome my pain and fury once I began seeing one. She showed me that I was a decent guy who was deserving of love and a family. I got back into dating after a while. Not Clara's sister, but another Anna. I met her at a little bookstore. She was as enthusiastic about literature as I was, and her smile and sparkling eyes could illuminate any room. When we began to converse, I experienced an overwhelming sense of comfort. Unlike with Clara, I began to develop feelings for her as our relationship progressed. She embodied the qualities that Clara lacked: kindness, honesty, and authenticity.